This is Grumble Jones. The situation is dire. We must hold the line.
Welcome to Pulling Cardboard episode 4. This is the second attempt to do episode 4. I did one yesterday. I used a different headset because I've noticed that in some of my previous videos, it's more difficult to hear me than not, and some of that is the low volume, I guess, at which I speak, but also the this microphone I didn't think was powerful enough. So I tried one yesterday, submitted the whole thing, had it on YouTube ready to go, and it looked like I was mute. I mean, I had the volume turned up. I couldn't even hear myself, so I had to scrap the whole episode, which I think was about 24 minutes or so. But any rate, I wanted to take a couple of minutes to sit down and talk about the 2026 March Madness tournament that just ended this past weekend. A super fun weekend always when you go up there to Kansas City. I always enjoy myself. That is the club that I most associate with, despite having lived and grown up in St. Louis for 20 years. And of course, I support Jim Burris and the St. Louis guys too, but I'm probably much more attached to the Kansas City guys, given sort of my Texas tournament experience with Dan Best. He's basically the first person outside of my friend group in St. Louis that I'd ever played with, and of course he brought me into the Kansas City fold. So again, it's a little bit closer for me. It's only about 4 hours as opposed to 7 or 8 to get to St. Louis, and the same was true somewhat in Quincy. When I was in Quincy, I was only 2 hours from St. Louis, but same distance as Tulsa, essentially from Kansas City. But at any rate, this tournament is one of the better ones that I've been to. I really enjoy it. The venue at the Shawnee Holiday Inn Express is always fantastic. Um, they have a great room that we use there. Plenty of space away from the kind of the main walkway. So you're kind of off to the side. So we don't have a lot of unnecessary traffic coming by. We don't have a lot of people, maybe gawking to see what we're up to. So it's private in that way, and there's a door that goes right out of the hotel right there in the back, so it's easy to get your kid in, easy to get your kid out, easy to take off, go to lunch, and if you smoke, easy to take smoke breaks. Um, just overall, really great place. There's a lot of good restaurants around there. Barley's would be my personal favorite. I really enjoy the fish and chips. They usually have that for the St. Patty's Day, and again, that's kind of my go-to on Friday. Usually, eat lunch there on Friday during the tournament. So at any rate, for me, it's about 4 hour drive, as I said. Kind of drive through a really nice part of Kansas, the eastern part of Kansas. Kind of parallels the old military road that ran between Fort Scott and Fort Gibson in Oklahoma. A lot of Civil War battles, skirmishes, raids fought alongside that road. And of course, a little bit further north, you run into Pottawatomie Creek and the massacre where John Brown and his guys, basically hooked a bunch of pro-slavery guys to death. So there's that level of history, and then there's also the several battles associated with Kansas City from Price's 1864 raid, where he'd come up out of Arkansas, went towards St. Louis, and at Knob. He fought Ewing there and had him surrounded, charged a couple times, suffered heavy losses. Ewing escapes in the night to St. Louis, and Price, having suffered the losses that he did, changed course and decided to head towards Jefferson City. And again, his force was never really strong enough to to, to take on either St. Louis or Jeff City. So he kind of moves up along the Missouri River and fights a couple battles around Glasgow, Arrow Rock, and then into the Kansas City proper and Westport. And then after he's pretty soundly defeated, his army is going to have to retreat south. They retreat through Kansas. fight several battles in Kansas, and probably the last one that really puts the nail in the coffin for his army is the Battle of Mine Creek, where 7,500 Confederates turned to face 2,500 pursuing uh, Union cavalry and basically are eliminated. Um, that battlefield is well interpreted. I visited that last year on the way up to March Madness. So at any rate, Richard Burton, a good buddy from Missouri, he and I had agreed to play round one. So we got together for round one and played Yankee Pride from Schwerpuck 17. Americans versus Germans. The Americans are attacking, basically trying to evict the Germans from level 1 and 2 hill urban uh, buildings. And there's basically three objectives. And if the Germans achieve two of them, or the Americans achieve two, they win the game. And that was one of the more fun games that I've played with Richard. We've played 4 or 5 times, I think, over the years, and our games are always competitive. Richard and I are very equally balanced as far as play goes. And in this one, would be pretty much the same. Would reflect a really nice tight game that went all the way to the end. Um, couple of the highlights, whenever you're attacking with Americans, you always have that advantage of firepower, particularly in advancing fire, and even better if you're adjacent to the enemy. In this particular game, I was able to kind of get up into the urban mass up on the hills, and I'd say by about turn two, I was getting ready to get inside the village area, the town, and start fighting for building control. I did make one foolish mistake after I had kind of cleared the delaying action force that he had. I did manage to capture the Panzerschreck from the half squad that we took out. But my Sherman 105, I had kind of gone on in around, and I wanted it to be able to stop and be able to shoot at a German squad that was kind of coming around that side. So I went for an ESB to stop and immobilized myself. Fortunately, I was right on the edge of the hill, so I had good visibility. I had good visibility to where Richard's reinforcements were going to come in. At I think turn three, he was going to get two Panthers, and they could come either on the front of me or to the side of me. I forget whether it was north or east. I think it was north and west. But so anyway, it was a good position. Um, our battle continued kind of in the city. I was getting the better of it, and as my other three tanks, I had two 75s, and then I had a 76L. Those three Shermans are kind of moving in to support the attack into the city, and um, just a really rough moment for Richard. He took a long range Panzerfaust shot, and he rolled a 7, which was a miss. The color die was a 1. And there was an officer, I think an 8-1 and a 548 in that house. He Yahtzees, who takes the K, and then he rolls back to back boxcars. So at the end, there is no squad. There's only a wounded and broken 8-1, now a 7-0. So really rough hit. That kind of opened the gate for my tanks to sweep around and really start to support my infantry assault as I was pushing him back. Um, and that's pretty much what happened. The two Shermans, the two Panthers came on, and one of them came on the side, my flank, and went after my base of fire group. I had a heavy machine gun and a medium, and he managed to take that out. He had some good assistance from his sniper. The sniper took out my 9-2, headshot at him. Whenever I have an officer in a stack, it's always my officer that gets hit. And of course, my squad with the medium broke. The heavy squad continued to fight, but I did have to kind of move out of that position. By that point in the game, their supporting fire wasn't really having a lot of targets. The Germans had moved further back into the urban mass, and I didn't have line of sight to them. And of course, my guys up front were already battling them. So it was going to be time to relocate that base of fire anyway. Uh, and I think he realized that, and so the Panther went back around and made the error of showing its rear to my 105 Sherman on the hill. I managed to get a hit and took out the Panther for the rear shot. Um, so one Panther down. The other one was was right in the thick of the fighting in the city. I was able to surround it with two of my other tanks, and he, offensive fired, boxcars, mouthed the gun. And at that point, he's surrounded by two tanks. He's got all my infantry getting ready to jump on him. The German infantry had broken, were falling back, and that was pretty much game over. Richard gave the concession, and it was time. There was very little chance that he was going to be able to get his troops rallied again and get back up the hill and into the victory area. So the first round, I was 1-0 in the beginning of the tournament. Um, Richard and I got lunch over at Barley's again. Like I said, the fish and chips there is amazing. And then round two was Jeff Hightoll and I, and Jeff, another guy from Missouri that I really enjoy playing. Played him in St. Louis as well as Kansas City. We would play Harkoski Assault, which many of you know is a Grumble Jones scenario that came part of the March Madness pack from last year, MM99, and it's um, it's been one of the more played scenarios in that pack because it's nice and small, easy to set up, easy to play, not a lot of special rules. It's pretty straightforward objective. Evict the Russians from the level 2 hill and you win the game. Um, there's a 37L AT gun that the Russians have, an ATR, a medium machine gun, and a light machine gun. The Hungarians, who are the attacker, have 5 Toldy tanks with 20L guns and pretty decent machine guns and a good number of squads. And Jeff would be the attacking Hungarians, and I would be the defending Russians. And this would be the only scenario of the three that I would play that I would actually be the defender. Um, right off the bat, the game really started lucky for me. Uh, the first tank, armor assaulting with 3 squads and a leader, knocked the tank out. It's burning. Um, and then my medium managed to get a K result, I believe, or it might have been a KIA result. I think it was a 3 down 1. And, all the guys broke in that stack. They would eventually rally, be back in the game, but that was kind of a major hit. Um, but Jeff really shrugged it off. I've played a lot of people that drawing first blood like that hard can make them become very cautious. Jeff didn't worry about it. He kept coming on all 4 tanks and the rest of his infantry. And my gun didn't do anything else that round. I got acquisition on another tank, but no more rate, no more hit. So Jeff got to the stream and had a lot of his guys in the stream ready to come out of the stream on the next turn and begin the kind of the general assault. So there's a bridge over here where he can then attack into some stone buildings, and I had most of my infantry concentrated there. My ATR and a half squad had been trying to cover the flank. They broke right away in advancing fire. My ATR never fired another shot. I have made that mistake twice playing this scenario. I do not put a sufficient force in my right, and his whole Schwerpunkt was going to turn the right flank, and that was ultimately going to cost me the game. So you have to consider that flank much more than I did. He chose not to go onto the left side because there's so much brush, and he rightfully concluded that was going to just eat up too much movement. And it is it's a fast-paced game. I think there's 5.5 turns. So in my prep fire turn 1, I've got acquisition on a tank. I rolled an 11, missed it. I intensify, I get a hit and knock out my second tank. But that was it. My anti-tank gun was done. He managed to break the crew in the succeeding defensive fires, and I eventually had to rout away. As the game went on, he overran the gun, destroyed it, and was up on the hill. Now, he did have one mishap on his side. He boxcarred a startup roll, so one of the toldies was immobilized on the other side of the stream. Still had good LOS to all my stuff, so he was able to continually use it. But the value of those tanks is cutting route paths and preventing the Russians from being able to reinforce the hill because he still had a sizable force on the other side of the stream fighting with my guys on the opposite side of the bridge. And I was able to kind of keep him away from there, push him off the bridge, but he was tying me up too. So now, as his flanking force with two tanks got on the hill, I really didn't have much to respond with. I managed to get one squad up there. Managed to get my crew rallied from the AT gun. They got back up on the hill, and then I had a leader squad and a medium in a foxhole. Basically, became the object of all his attention. Rightfully so. That's if he takes that position, he wins a game. And yeah, it was a really nice, intense game. It was my favorite of the three that I would play over the weekend. And Jeff got a tank. He made an overrun attack, and then he stayed in the hex. So close combat followed, and he had the advantage. But there's the sequential element of close combat once armor is involved. So I would have the first attack because I was going after the tank, and then he would attack me. Then his infantry would attack me, and he rolled back-to-back boxcars in close combat and was not able to close the deal. I managed to. I want to say if I got reinforcements there, I don't think I did. I think the crew got up there, but they didn't get back in there. He managed to reinforce it, so now they needed like a 9. So we are in the final turn of the game. I successfully destroyed the tank in the close combat phase before the final one. So now it's infantry to infantry. I believe I was Hafford at that point, and I do want to say my crew. Yes, my crew was in there because the crew was helping me to fight the infantry while the squad took on the tank. So at any rate, I had 5 to whatever it was. He needed a 9 against the two squads he had versus in the leader. And it really, I mean, if he doesn't get that, it's potentially a Russian win. So I blogged about this too. But Jeff, very intentional. He's looking right at me and he's holding that dice up, and he had very intentional before he dropped it in the cup. And of course, it was what he needed, and that was the game, and he had to win. Um, so I'm currently 0-3 lifetime against Jeff. One of these days, I'm gonna not play the Russians. I suck as the Russians. I got to stop playing good players as the Russians. So the next game that I play with Jeff, I won't be the Russians, man. I'm gonna be somebody else. But a great game. I always enjoy playing with Jeff. And that was the end of Friday. So I was 1-on-1, going to bed Friday night. And one of the great things about the March Madness tournament is, in the evenings, there's a lot of community. A lot of the guys will break out something else to play, or they'll sit around and talk. I think I went down there again around 9:30 to pick up my scenario card information for round three, and there were a bunch of guys down there still, 9:30, 10 o'clock, still talking. It's just a really great group, and I want to say there were 34 people in attendance this year. And of course, we had ASL royalty. Kurt Schilling had come, which was fantastic to have somebody from basically the top of MMP in attendance at that tournament. Um, sometimes the Midwest tournaments don't get quite as much press as the bigger ones out east. So it was nice to have him in attendance, and he blogged about that or on their. He and Brian Yowes talk about it on their "We're Not Dead Yet" podcast that they do on YouTube, and they had a great time. So if you haven't watched that, I highly recommend it. So Saturday, we start round three, and I would be um, uh, matched up against Chuck Anderson. I'd seen Chuck for years. He's always at the March Madness tournament, but I had never had a chance to play him. So he and I are matched up to play round three, and we're going to play the Overlook from the ASL Arnhem pack from 2024. And I believe it's AR4 is the scenario. Essentially, the Red Devils are up on a hill, dug in, and the Germans are attacking. Not SS in this case, but the Germans are attacking. They have two of the French BIS tanks with flamethrowers. Powerful, powerful tanks. Their armor is not very good. The Piats can take them out really easily. I had played this one once before as the defending Red Devils, and I was able to knock out both of the tanks fairly early in the game before they really got a chance to flame me because they only have a one range on the flamethrowers. They have to get adjacent, and I succeeded in knocking him out with the Piats because again the armor isn't substantial enough to stop a Piat shot. Um, but in our game, I had done the same kind of defense that Chuck did. So Chuck is doing a reverse slope defense. He is not on the crest of the hill. He's created a basically a killing zone in the empty hexes, the open ground hexes, as you first come up onto level two. It's the exact right way to do it. And the same thing I did. The one thing he did differently that I had not done or hadn't even thought of on the left, my left, his right, he had two foxholes. I assume those were real squads. And so I held back and then I advanced in advance phase of turn one. I had two, four, three, sixes up there. And then I advanced all my other conscript squads, most of which were CX at that point. And then I had some two, three sixes. I went ahead and deployed two of the four, three, sixes. Their job is basically just to strip the concealment of whatever the force is. Now on my right, Chuck's left, he had a substantial group of guys over there, and they really bloodied me on that side. And in the center, there's a stone house on the overlay, and that is the only way the German tanks are going to be able to get behind the hill is they can bypass this house. Otherwise, it's all trees. And he had the hero in there with a DC. Now I had the hero with a Piet, and I think historically, the way the scenario represents, the hero of that battle was a guy that had the Piet. But still, that's a great use of the hero for a DC. And unbeknownst to me, those two guys over here that were concealed in foxholes, the two separate foxholes, didn't attack me. That's usually a red flag if I'm playing Dan Best, as I always do. If he doesn't shoot me, I kind of gather those are dummies. In this case, I wasn't positive because again, there's an advantage for him to stay concealed against conscripts, right? If I try to go in there in a close combat, he's more likely to get the ambush, and if he's got a 648, which is what I assumed were in each of those, he's going to get the better of me. So I went in on turn two because I still nothing came from those two locations. Turn two, I went ahead and bump checked them to see if they were real. They weren't, and so I get into the foxholes. Now he had adjacent foxholes, all the way to the back of the hill, so he had plenty of defensive fire, and he would end up breaking one of those 4.36s, but one would survive. And that was enough. That was the bridgehead, if you will, that I had to have. And from there, I was able to build my attack. He did come back and take one of those foxholes back later in the game, which was a great move. Took me out in close combat, as I had predicted earlier. But now he was surrounded, more or less, and I was able to break those guys, and their ability to escape was hindered. I sent both flame tanks forward, and I would roll snake eyes on the first flame shot against the hero, and hero is incinerated. Unbelievably, the DC survives, and hold that thought. The DC is going to be part of this again. Um, so then my two tanks bypass. My attack on the right is still stymied. I'm having a hard time. He manages to break my leader over there with 3 4.47s, and I never recovered them. He would eventually slam them. Sniper would hit that stack, kill the leader. Uh, the leader lost morale checks. Would not go well for me, and because I believe it was an 8-1 leader. And by the end of the game, I had two half squads of it, two Millard half squads, so two 3.6s, and never rallied. And that attack really was defeated. I had pushed over at one point during that. He pushed me back, but I still had. This is the crazy thing. I had another 4.36 over there that had survived and didn't go down, and that was preventing some of the opportunity. He couldn't move out in the open to eliminate my brokies or anything like that. So that would be important. Um, Now the attack in the center of the hill, his mortar did good work, got a lot of hits, but I was in foxhole, so wasn't doing a lot to me, pinning me here and there. Um, and there's a special SSR where there's a building down on the other side of the hill. In that building, he has to put so many guys, and they are under no move until they have an LOS to a German unit on the hill or after turn four. I went ahead and moved one of my eventually lost flame with one of my tanks. So that tank we put over there visible to the guys in the house. So now they have the ability to move, freedom of movement. And anyway, they would have had it in the next phase anyway. So I, did it on the same turn. But now I'm ready for them, and I have a squad underneath the tank, and I have the other flame tank defending that same side. And then I'm trying to push more of my infantry towards the right, where I have been getting hammered all game, because I've got to clear that. For me to win a game, there can't be more than one good order British squad on the level 2 hill. Um, so he makes his counterattack. The reinforcements are coming up, and to his credit, Chuck didn't hold back. He came at me full bore. And for the second time in the game, I snake eyed a flame shot, 30 minus 2, or 30 down 2, and annihilated, um, incinerated a leader in 2 squads. He only has 8 squads, so 1/4 of them just got burned up on that shot, and that's tough. I talked about it in a blog. Snake eyes, things like that, can really unbalance a scenario, unbalance a game. To do 2 of them, to have 2 30 factor shots, uh, it's 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 great if it's to your benefit, but your opponent, that's hard. That's tough on your opponent, and I know it wasn't fun for Chuck to have to experience that. So that attack was basically stopped. We were able to break anybody else left over on the left. So now, with coming down to my final movement phase, it was time to take care of a squad, 2 half squads, and a leader over on the right. Um, as we talked about, my force over here was already diminished. I'm down to a single squad who's going to contribute, by checking movement. But now the rest of my guys have to swing. I'm rolling the tanks that direction. They don't have a lot of movement, so I could not get them adjacent. Basically, they're all mission killed. Um, but I had picked up the British DC. My 9-1 had the British demo charge, and I successfully placed that demo charge on his full squad. In advancing fire, I was able to eliminate that squad. It's just very odd thing, if you want to pick up your opponent's weapons, particularly DCs, because they can come in handy, and that was the case in our game. Now I had not realized at that point that the game was over, and Chuck reminded me. He said, "Hey, that's it. All I've got left are the 2 half squads that are equivalent to the one squad meets the German victory conditions. So that's game." And like I said, I enjoyed the game. I thought it was fun. I, from Chuck's perspective, I certainly understood that it was quite not as much fun. And again, I think it's the snake eyes. And those of you who follow my blog know that my dice are very erratic. They're heck, Jekyll and what Jekyll and Hyde on me, schizophrenic. I never know what the hell I'm going to roll, and the exact same dice that give me nothing for weeks. I went through a 10 game losing streak against Dan, and then in one game they gave me 2 snake eyes at a critical, very valuable moment in the game. But at any rate, that was the end of my tournament. I was only going to play 3 games. My wife had surgery today. In fact, I just got her home from surgery. Um, Basically, hand surgery for carpal tunnel and some other arthritis kind of things. So she's on the couch, pretty heavily bandaged right now, and so I wanted to get home. Just anxious to get home. The older I get, the more anxious I am about just being home with my wife. I don't know if that's a symptom of age or whatever it is, but for me, I've talked about this before and blogged about it. I'm something of an introvert. Um, I get drained after a while. If I'm around too many people for too long. I'm not as gregarious. I always give Dan props. He's a very gregarious guy. I mean, he will play anybody, anytime. He's just a great guy. I am a little bit more private. I'm a little bit more. I stay a little bit more distant, and well, that's just me. And so I was happy to get 3 good games in, and like I said, all 3 of them were fun. Um, all of them went to the wire. And again, I would say being beaten as the scenario designer is always a check the box kind of thing, and I enjoyed the game with Jeff quite a bit. But obviously, my thanks out to Richard Burton, Jeff Ital, and Chuck Anderson for three great games and the competitiveness that everybody brought to the table. Um, I didn't stay for the raffle. The raffle used to be a big deal for me, years and years ago. This was um, my ninth March Madness. I don't. I have everything now. I mean, it's weird to say that. There's really nothing that I don't have that's available. Of course, I don't have Arnhem. I don't have some of the Comfort Piper too. When I was not playing back in the late '90s and early 2000s, I just missed out on those things because I had nobody to play with, so I didn't buy them. There's no Taro, and I probably would never buy Taro anyway. Um, that one's never really appealed to me very much. At any rate, I took off. I think around 12:30, which is fairly early for me. But we all knew that some bad weather was coming in, and in fact, for Chuck, I think he's in Colorado. He was going to spend a whole day Sunday at March Madness because the winds were going to be pretty bad. And I can tell you, Sunday and early Monday, the winds in Tulsa were absolutely unreal. And we get a lot of bad wind, but they were sustained. I mean, 40, 50 mile an hour winds sustained all day. Uh, I went to Walmart with my wife to grocery shop, and bags are flying out on my cart. I'm chasing stuff all over the parking lot. Um, and there was a big old sign, for people that are having their groceries brought out to them. And it's got a big metal sign, and I had seen it. I parked right in front of it, and it was on the ground, so I put it back up. And my wife looked at me and says, I don't think you should park there. And so I got in the car and I moved, and no sooner had I moved, and the wind blew that sign right back down, would have let it right on my hood and just hit the hell out of it. So thank goodness I listened to my wife and parked somewhere else. But at any rate, it was March Madness. Like I said, I just wanted to get on and talk about that and give props to Paul Works, Dan Best, and Dave Moreski for the great work that they do. Um, obviously they've been doing this, I think, since I want to say 2006, if I remember right, was the kind of the resurrection. They had done it previously, but this was the current crew. Goes back to 2006, so 20 years. I mean, hats off, guys. You've done a tremendous job with one of the better tournaments I think in the Midwest. Um, it feels a lot like St. Louis. Uh, you see a lot of the same folks. I would say the primary difference that I noticed in St. Louis is you're going to get more people from the Chicago area, which is always great. There's so many great players in that part of the country, and you know, trying to get to Kansas City, it can be done. Dave Kleinschmidt made the trip from Naperville last year, or I'm not sure in Naperville, but somewhere in the Chicago suburbs that he lives, and but we don't see a ton of those folks. Of course, Chuck coming from Denver, that's a good 8-hour drive as well. Um, and we get a lot of guys from Michigan show up at March Madness. So um, if you're looking for a tournament and you're in the Midwest or you're within 6 or 7 hours, I definitely recommend it. It's a great time. It is a tournament that supports all levels of play. Starter kit. A bunch of people are playing Elst. I want to say Cardboard Commander, if you're not familiar with him. Jerry, I don't know Jerry's last name, but Jerry runs Cardboard Commander on YouTube. Did a whole video of playing Elst and some other games that he did at this year's March Madness. And then, of course, there's the minis that were played on Saturday. So if you didn't want to progress in the tournament, let's say after round one, you haven't won, you've lost one or two games. Saturday there was a mini for the Citadel, which Kurt Schilling won, and then there was a mini for Hill 621. And I apologize, I can't remember who won the that mini. Um, Wes Vaughn and Paul Sidhu played for the championship, and Paul would win first place, and Wes would come in second. Uh, Again, great tournament. Um, I always enjoy going. It's a great way to start the tournament year for me, and it's just kind of a mile marker every year for me. I look forward to March Madness. Sort of bummed out when it's over, and I'll start looking forward to 2027. So that's it for now, guys. I'll be back with episode 5, and we'll try to jazz it up. And hopefully, the microphone worked on this one, and you guys can hear me speak. I will be looking for a different microphone. I've always wondered why these guys have these big mics. Yeah, I understand now why, because this isn't really enough for video capture. So anyway, until next time, see ya.
Achtung, Achtung! Der Luftschutzwarndienst gibt bekannt.